This isn't just a podcast, it's a reckoning, a calling, a return to what's real, to what's right, to what's yours. Because somewhere along the way, leadership became a game of sacrifice, success became a cage, and legacy, something you leave behind instead of something you live right now. The modern culture is here to change that. This is where old rules crumble and something truer, deeper, and far more powerful takes their place. Where leadership is about presence, where success is aligned, and where legacy lives in every moment you choose to lead differently. Co-hosted by Cari and Leah Rolling, this is the space where fire meets flow, where strategy bows to wisdom, and where disruption isn't feared, it's embraced. If you're ready to build without burnout, to create without compromise, to lead in a way that feels like you, welcome to the modern culture.
Welcome, friends. Today, we are moving on with our principles. We are diving into the one that we believe separates performative leadership from powerful leadership. And that is the principle of relational integrity. If you've missed the four before, please go back and watch them on double speed, whatever you need to do, because they do build on each other. And not that one is required for the other, but for your benefit and for your growth, I would love for you to bring forward these for you in whatever way that looks. So relational integrity is the principle that we are diving into today. And I'm wickedly excited about it because relationships are key. The relationships that you have with yourself, the relationships that you have with the people on your team, they are your number one investment. And we know this and we say this and we give it incredible lip service, but I don't really know if we really believe that that's true. Mm-hmm. And if our time and our money goes to what we truly believe is the number one thing, I want you to be honest with yourself about where yours is going. And so that's what we get to dig into today. When we can't create a culture that we think we want, it's because of a lack of congruence. And so in this episode, we are pulling back the curtain on how these relational gaps leak into your leadership, why high achievers, yes, you too, unintentionally break trust, and the small daily practices that we're going to tease in at the very end, like we do in all of them, that help rebuild it, one aligned moment at a time. So relational integrity is not about being perfect. It's about being trusted. It's about being real. And so let's get into this principle, Miss Cari.
I was going to say, Leah, let's just dive in because I don't want to waste a single moment of the brilliance that we get to bring forward with them today. So let's break down relational integrity. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about this principle? Talk to us about what it really encapsulates.
Yeah. So relational integrity is the practice, and I say that on purpose. It is a practice of aligning and consistently realigning back to who you are. It centers on what you believe and therefore impacts how you lead. It's about building connection through congruence, like we said earlier, not performance. It's the discipline from leading with authentic self-trust rather than in manipulation, masks, or power plays. So that's what I would say it is.
So what is it not then?
It's not honest. It's not basic honesty. It's not, well, I told the truth. Isn't that enough? Right? Because if your energy and your actions don't match your words, that's not honest. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not, and we've used this word before, it's not performative vulnerability. Right? Yeah. And we've seen that, they overshare kind of for connection. They become overly emotional for that connection, and they put it under the guise of, oh, I'm being vulnerable. But there's no accountability there. There's no extreme responsibility there. It's I'm oversharing. Here's all my emotions. Here you are. I'm going to lay them right at your feet. No. Relational integrity is laying them at your feet. Right? It's not about perfection, right? I said that earlier. We're still human. You're still human. Last time I checked, the world is still full of humans, right? But you commit to repairing when you fall out of alignment. That is your responsibility when you come out into alignment. It's not anybody else's responsibility to get you back into alignment. That's what it's not.
Yeah. Well, and I love the vulnerability piece, because I think we see this way too often, that vulnerability brought forward to create fake harmony. But that vulnerability is actually, a lot of times when it's brought forward, it's a vulnerability for validation, not in accountability. There is huge distinction and a difference there.
Yes.
So many times when you're saying, I'm telling you all the things, but what's the intention underneath it? That's the relational integrity. What's the integrity of the words that I'm bringing forward? Am I doing it for validation, or am I doing it for accountability? Or am I bringing it forward from a place of power, because I've already navigated through, and I'm bringing it to you as a lesson that I have learned that could impact or create empowerment in this moment? So I love that you brought that vulnerability in, because it's huge. It's huge. What does this then get confused with, right? Outside of like that vulnerability or, those types of things, where else does this relational integrity get confused?
I think it really is kind of just echoes what you said. It gets confused with just being honest, being vulnerable, right? It also has to do with that false sense of connection to be liked. So you see a lot of over proving, you see a lot of over pleasing, you see a lot of over accommodating, a lot of over pretending, a lot of performing under the guise of, this integrity in relationship. Yeah. And so relational integrity it's deeper, right? It's about creating trust with yourself, right? Because people can feel that when you show up, not needing them, right, to be any different. When you can just show up being you, and they don't have to feel like manipulated into validating you so that you feel better. And it goes back to that concept that you brought forward earlier, which is brilliant. Are you laying your vulnerability on your feet, at your feet, or are you laying it at somebody else's?
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah.
So then what would you say is the science? Because we always love to tease that. People love neurosciences. It's not my jam. Okay. But we bring it forward anyway, because I know there's people who really, and I do like the science. I just don't dig into it. I'll let you do the research. So tell us what you found.
I love to dig. And in all the principles, we're digging in the science in all three different perspectives: the neurological perspective, the psychological perspective, and the organizational perspective. So we'll start with the neurological, because that's probably one of my favorites. Yes. But our brains are constantly scanning for congruence, which is the word that I brought forward at the beginning. Are we in alignment? Okay. And so our brains are constantly scanning for alignment, right? Do your words, do your actions, does your energy match? Okay. Not just yours, but others. And so when you're finding yourself out of alignment, right, then it's really hard for you to come back into that alignment. And you're going to find all sorts of proof, and then everybody else is out of alignment too. Okay. And when it's not in alignment, you're going to find yourself triggered, right? You're going to find yourself in a place of fight or flight. And when they do, right, when you find yourself that way, you're going to disconnect yourself, and you're going to step out of the natural state that you feel like you belong in. So that's what happens at the neurological level. The psychological level is cognitive dissonance, right? It happens when leaders act out of sync with their words, right? And teams feel it, right? She says this, but she does this, right? I can't trust her because she talks a really good game in the meetings, right? She's taking notes, she's doing all the things, And she says she's going to do this and she doesn't do any of it, right? And then that psychological safety, you guys, it is so big, because the number one predictor, not because Cari and I say so, but of high performing teams, is that safety, is that ability for your team member to feel innovative, to be able to feel creative, to be able to step forward and say, you know what? I don't think we're on the right path. I don't think this aligns with mission, right? To give them the space and the safety to be able to step forward in that is massive. And then if you think about organizationally, cultures mirror the leadership integrity, right? Organizations either thrive or they're fractured based on whether or not the leaders are in alignment or incongruent with the things that they say, do, and know. And then again, not because we say so, this is all research, trust-based cultures, they see higher intervention, higher innovation, higher retention, less absenteeism, higher engagement, higher profitability, right? The fear-based ones see burnout, they see turnover, they see absenteeism, they see this quiet quitting. They see people just showing up just enough to get a paycheck, but they're not in alignment, not with themselves, not with the purpose, not with the mission, not with what you're asking them to do. So that's what I would say is how it shows up. So that's what I would say. So now it's showing up, or it isn't showing up. Maybe you don't know it's showing up. What do they look for? What do the leaders look for? What are some of the warning signs that someone hasn't maybe embodied this, or they're falsely showing vulnerability, thinking that that is what is being required because that's all the buzz? Just be vulnerable. Just right. What are the warning signs?
Yeah. It will show up in so many different ways. It will show up in that, like you say, inability to mirror the action with the words that are being spoken. It will, and when I look at this, when we look at relational integrity, there's like two different components here, right? Because you think, well, yeah, they say they're going to do it, but they don't do it. And you have that, but it doesn't really affect me, right? Well, it does, because if they can't host integrity with themselves, they're not going to host integrity with you. And the expectations that they're placing on themselves are different than the expectations that they're placing on you, if that makes sense. And that's where a lot of people will start to see this. Well, they are expecting me to perform in this way, and I don't see that coming from them, right? They're rolling in here a little bit later, or they're saying they're going to do something and there's not. So they're holding me to a different standard than they're holding themselves to. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, what's happening is they're not seeing you for you. That's the true breakdown in relational integrity. When I'm seeing you as an extension of me, and I'm not allowing myself to see you as you. Meaning that my expectation of you is the expectation or what I see of me. And that is going to erode trust at that base level. People don't always see it in that way, but you'll notice it in the quiet. Mm-hmm. There will be quiet in meetings. You will ask for feedback and you will receive nothing, right? So that you're going to have that component of it where the expectations are going to be out of balance, but then you're also going to see it in what we deemed last weekend in our event, this toxic loyalty. I mean, how often have we sat back and watched leaders, and I have done it myself, you guys. So I am not saying that I have been outside of this. There's a reason why we brought this in, because we know the importance of it. You hold on to people for too dang long, and others see it. Mm-hmm. Right? You're holding on to people. You're justifying the dysfunction because you're not wanting to shake up the culture. Well, you've already killed it.
Yes.
So when you're holding misaligned people, when you're holding on to broken systems or the outdated expectations because of that that fear and that guilt, like you've already eroded the culture that you are so efforting to build. It's not even there. So when your team stops trusting you, they're gonna do this. Yep, I agree. I think whatever you're doing is great. We watched it in a meeting, Leah. We watched it in a meeting. You would ask somebody, so what do you think? And what's your feedback? I just agree with everything she said. I just mirror back everything she said. Once somebody starts down that path, misalignment has already been at play. And that relational integrity is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we need to look for those moments in which that vulnerability is coming forward and you're feeling it, is that I need to respond back to it, broken.
Yep.
When the inability to step forward and have the hard conversations, broken. This is where it's going to show up.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good. So why? Why now more than ever and we're going to make a big case, friends, for all these principles, but why more than now is this principle required, especially for the leaders of the world? Such a big question.
Well, it's a huge question. And I know I have brought this up multiple times, but I'm going to continue to say it. One, people are becoming way more attuned to the mismatched words that are being spoken and the presence that's being felt.
Mm-hmm.
We are becoming more attuned to that. We are sitting in a time period, in an energy of mistrust. We don't feel safe. I don't know if there's anybody who could honestly say that I walk out into this world today and I feel safe in everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that psychological safety. And it is really where this relational integrity matters the most. Okay? Because the cost of this misalignment truly is the trust. And once you lose that, nothing else matters. Okay? You're going to lose influence. Anytime somebody sees a mismatch, well, they show up on Instagram like this, or you're seeing this out on Facebook, but I know what's going on behind the scenes, right? You see that in one, you start questioning it in all. So what we need to do as leaders is we need to bring forward back that realignment, that trust. We need to give our employees, our cultures, the people who are around us, the ability to see the trust from us, to know that they have safety to be able to have conversations and bring them forward. Because quite honestly, there's not a lot of places that they can do it. And people have become too accustomed to the toxicity that is sitting in the culture. Please don't add to it.
Ugh.
That's what I would say.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We could just go on that forever. I saw it. You're
Yes.
like,
yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So what then, when we're looking at this and we're looking at trust and we're looking at the embodiment of this principle, what are some of the common illusions or the coping mechanisms that people are going to fall into?
Well, it's kind of like I mentioned before. We over please, we over prove, we overdo in order to feel value, to feel enough, to feel significant, and we call that relational integrity, right? We lose integrity with ourselves in order to accommodate everybody else's expectations of us. That is not safety, right?
Yeah.
It is not safety. That is survival. And we don't want organizations just to survive anymore. We're all done with that. It's over. It's over. We want you thriving, right? So it looks like overthinking too, right? Mm-hmm. It looks like living in the land of miserable maybe someday. Maybe it's being indecisive. It's not making any decisions. It's staying stuck in confusion, right? It's numbing out. It's kind of like Cari mentioned earlier. Like you ask your team, how's everybody doing? Give me some feedback. And they're like,
Right.
Whatever you think. That's good. That's good. Right. It looks like micromanaging or overmanaging, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to control everything, right? Because there's so much chaos and static internally. Again, it looks like that chasing that validation, seeking applause or approval to feel enough or worthy instead of just anchoring it in your own self-trust. Instead of defending it, declare it. It looks like overperforming. Looks like blaming. It looks like massive amounts of resentment. As I mentioned, people pleasing. So that's what all of this, like, this is what we do in our attempt when we're out of alignment to fight our way back into alignment, right? Yeah. But what is the behavior, right? Mm-hmm. What is this behavior, right? Actually doing for them? Because we know that there's a reason. We know that there's a reason that they do this. It's justified in our humanness.
Yeah.
What is it? Because maybe they can see themselves in the behavior.
Well, what's interesting is I've actually watched this over the course of the past, I don't know, week, in a number of different organizations is how I've seen this. What it does is it buys you a pass. That's what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you feel like you're liked. It makes you feel like you're in charge. I mean, when you talk about that over managing, it's over controlling,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you talk about it's over accommodating, the people pleasers, it's over accommodating. But look what it gets you. You get to be the person that everybody likes, that nobody talks bad about. Well, not in front of you, behind you, right? It allows you to avoid the discomfort of the difficult conversation. I mean, that was such a conversation last weekend as we were navigating through, right? I will accommodate, I will shift, I will move somebody. Let me take them out of your space and put them in my space, right? Because I don't want to have the hard conversation around where you're misaligned in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're not allowing them to be who they need to be in order to perform the way you want them to. They're performing better because they're in the energy of who they are. When you try to shift that because it looks different than you, right? And you get angry about it, you don't have the conversation with them. You talk about it to the other leaders of the organization, and you have an expectation that doesn't align with them, you are going to stifle their genius. And we can't do that. And the other thing it does too, again, it allows you to sit in the, well, I don't have to have the hard conversation. I don't want to upset them. They might throw a tantrum, right? They might pull out of the project completely. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I just don't say anything, right? I don't ask the deeper questions. It keeps you safe, but it also kills the project. It doesn't allow for project progress. It doesn't allow for innovation. Nobody ever gets clarity around the expectation of what's truly desired in the organization. Yeah. I mean, what would you say to that, Leah?
I mean, the same, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that is what happens when you are reaching out of alignment for alignment without realizing you're out of alignment.
Exactly.
You just stay stuck in that trap of misalignment, and you ensure the very thing that you're trying to navigate around.
Yes.
And so if that is true, and we know it's true because we've seen it's true, like not having that hard conversation and like over accommodating just so that you don't have to have a conversation, because that conversation might make you look bad, or it might make you look like you don't know, or you're not smart enough, or what have you. So I'll just remedy this by taking things into my own hands, right? So if this is the behavior, right? Mm-hmm. What are the most common obstacles that people face when trying to live or lead by this principle? What stops them, even though they know better? And it's probably what we've kind of already said, but bring us forward.
Yeah, I was going to say it is so much of what we have already talked about. At the end of the day, for high achievers, it is about being seen as not doing enough. Mm-hmm. That's an obstacle. It is of not allowing others to be able to take charge to move forward in what they need to do, because you feel like you will let somebody down in the process of it. So you end up holding the whole container of it. Okay. You don't, but then you also don't want to be seen as the B word, right? Because as a woman in an organization, if you have a hard conversation, people aren't going to like you. You're going to be too direct. You're going to be too mean. You're not going to be soft enough. You're going to be the killer of ideas, right? Because they're going to see it as that conversation, when not brought forward in compassion. Like you said earlier, let's please go back and look at these other principles, because they all build on one another. Mm-hmm. Right? If you have that compassion and you can come forward in a conversation, you can give truth with care. That's what you can do. But the obstacle to that is that we don't have compassion. We step forward out of control, and we think we're having relational integrity, and then we're being seen as too direct, and then people will fear us. And so we back down, because then we feel like if people fear us, the project's not going to get done. And we go into the people pleasing thing again. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So then what do we need to do, Leah? Like if you start to see this cycle and you understand that, you know what, we're out of alignment here, or I'm out of alignment, because as we always say, if you're out of alignment there, you're out of alignment here.
Yes.
What is something that they can do to pull that back in?
I mean, anything and any tool that you have ever used to presence yourself, right? That would be the invitation, right? I want you to clear your space. I want you to clear your calendar. I want you to, and your conversations of anything that requires you to perform instead of being present, right? So if a commitment, right, forces you to kind of fake a certain alignment, release it, renegotiate it, right? If your calendar is packed with all the things that you should be doing, right? Because that's what a good mom would do, or that's what a good boss would do, or you know what? My team won't do it, so I'll just do it for them, right? And then I don't have to have the conversation to have them do it, right? Or, right, I don't have to have the tough, and quotes, friends, strong, direct conversation because I don't want to be the B word. So instead, what I will do is I will whip cream the edges and they will have no clue what I've asked them to do because I've actually asked them not to do anything. Because what I've done is I've just like ladled it with, you know, if you think about it and if you could, that would be really great. If you get a chance, could you please, if you want to? That's what that looks like. And there was not a question in there at all, friends. So they either think you're like a B word or they just think you're terribly confused.
Yes.
Right. So it's like a lose-lose, right? But there's a compassion way to bring that forward, right? And here's the thing. If your environment is chaotic, out of alignment, not in congruence, your nervous system will be too. So if you find yourself in complete nervous system distress, that is a beautiful signal to come back into alignment with self. Like that is the cue, right? That's what I would say. Yeah. Just check your calendar, check your conversations, check where you're shooting all over the world, come back into what is true. What is true? What is true for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you want to bring us home, Miss Cari? What do they need?
Here's what I would say is that I think the hardest thing when we look at relationships is in the conversation. It is always in, how do I bring forward this conversation without whipped creaming it, without being too direct around it, right? Because either way, then we hold ourselves back from it. Like, I don't want to say too much, or, you know, I'm not sure how I can wrap this thing in like silk and make it cozy and like give them a bubble bath with some bubbles and lavenders and some roses. And then I'm going to have the hard conversation, right? Let me get you all cozy first.
How do I make them comfortable, Cari?
How do I make you
my PI?
I know. I should literally die to make you comfortable, you guys. It's this. Like, if you could take anything this next week, one, like Leah said, pull yourself back into presence. Right? Just pull yourself back into presence, find yourself in a space of quiet. And I always like to take a deep breath. But in that deep breath, if you are needing to navigate in a difficult conversation, what if you did this? What if you closed your eyes? You just took a really deep breath. Maybe it's going to take 2 or 3, whatever, do it. But if you took a deep breath and you said, what is the one sentence I could bring forward of truth right now? That's it. One sentence of truth that I could bring forward. So that's how I'd wrap it up. That's what I would say to take into this next week as you kind of navigate through this principle. And please go back, listen to the other ones, and just know that we've got another ringer coming in next week with Principle 5. So appreciate you guys being here, and we can't wait till next time.
See you soon. Everybody. Bye.
You have been listening to The Modern Culture, co-hosted by Leah Rowling and Cari Kenzie. This is the space where fire meets flow, where strategy bows to wisdom, and where disruption isn't feared, it's embraced. Tune in every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Network, because this isn't just a podcast. It's a reckoning, a calling, a return.